Hi there. I have the privilege of having Daniel Stenberg with me here today. How are you doing, Daniel?
Hello, hello. Everything is fine here in Sweden today.
Fantastic, and thank you for taking time to speak with me on this Monday. It's already 6 p.m. for you, 9 o'clock in the morning on my holiday here in Canada, and it's fantastic to have you here. And Daniel, what do you do today? What's your job today?
I work on curl full time, so most of my days is fiddling with the issues and pull requests around curl, planning for
Fantastic.
the coming release that's going to happen next week.
So before we explore Crow and talk a little bit more about that project and the importance that the huge project has on everything that we do here, let's go back in time. How did technology, how did computers come into your life?
I discovered computers when I was mid-teens. I think was maybe 13, 14, at the time when I had a classmate that got a Commodore 64. And some others got some other computers too, but that sort of opened up my eyes for computers, and that you could actually, program them, and got into BASIC a little bit, and typing computer programs from magazines into the computers, and learning all that, and of course the games and all of that. The entire universe of computers immediately made me interested and keen on learning more and dabbling more with it myself.
Was it BASIC your first programming language?
Yes, because when I got my own Commodore 64, which I did that in 1985 when I was 14, Commodore 64 ships with BASIC, right? So the BASIC is there already. When you just power it up, there's BASIC. So it was the sort of the natural first step. Do the basic things, print, blah blah, go to, and see what happens. Yes,
that's fantastic. And how did you get some exposure to technology during your elementary school or secondary school in Sweden, or how did that work for you?
Well, in the 80s, there weren't that much computer in schools, really. So I did not get exposed to that much in school. I got it later in school a little bit, but most of it was just because I wanted to, and I learned it myself, and I just explored and researched it on my own, and my friends, of course, who also had the same interest.
Yeah, how did life evolve from that? The beginning there with the Commodore 64 and BASIC, and that certainly generated some interest on you. And how did you learn more?
I got into that so hard, and I discovered the demo scene on the Commodore 64, and I wanted to be part of that too, and my friends too. So we learned how to do assembly and graphics programming on the Commodore 64. So we did, and I spent all my spare time doing assembly programming on this 6502 CPU, and then doing demos and stuff like that. We also then got to what was called copy parties at the time here in the Nordics, really. So basically a bunch of other teens who got together in schools over a weekend, and we all brought in our computers, and we spent the weekend programming demos. We often had a demo competition by the end of the weekend. But so we were a couple of hundred of kids who didn't sleep, ate bad, and wrote silly demos over a weekend. But the good part of that, apart from just meeting people and learning more how to program and all of that, was the social side of it, because I got to meet a lot of other people with the same interest, right? And we joined demo groups, and we did more demos, and we met other people, and those people have been good to know later on in life, of course, because that was sort of the beginning of everything. So that all of that really formed my life from that. Without me knowing that, of course, at the time, I just did it because it was so fun. I didn't know what to do with that other than just enjoy myself.
And it's incredible that you're kind of you're learning, but you're getting some networking done already, right? So like I said, you're meeting some people that will be important later in life as well. And how did life evolve from there? How did you go into? I don't think you went into university, did you?
No, because at the time when I was I applied to some courses at the university here in Stockholm, And at the same time, while pretty much planning for that, I got contacted by a friend from the Commodore 64 scene previously, and he asked me if I was interested in a job at IBM because he was working there and they needed more people. And then I figured, I was so keen on that would be a sort of an opportunity to work with computers, because why not? That was sort of what I wanted to do, because computers seemed fun. So I figured, sure, I can just pause the university plans for a while and see how this plays out. I couldn't work for a year or so, and then go to university. So I started at IBM and worked with installing and customizing RS-6000 machines. Back then, they all those IBM customers, all their machines arrived at a single spot in Sweden where they were customized and cleaned up and installed and everything, and then they were shipped out to customers from there. So I worked with a few other people there, just a small team. But then I got to learn about Unix and RS-6000.
Were they running AIX at the time?
Yes.
Or?
Yes. Yeah. So that was my first exposure to Unix, the AIX.
Fantastic. It's incredible, right? So how long did you work for IBM?
About 2 years. And then they reorganized, so they would stop doing it this way. They would instead ship everything from Copenhagen, which is in Denmark, so not even in Sweden. So they were downsizing, and at the same time, around that time when they were doing that, my younger brother already worked as a developer at a software company here in Stockholm, and they offered me a job, or I applied for a job there and got it. So
fantastic. Was it did you get to using Linux at the time as well, or you're not familiar with Linux?
It was a little bit before Linux came, really, because so I got this first, and my first developer job in 1993.
I see.
That was really, well, Linux existed, but I wasn't aware of it, and it was still a young age, right? So I actually started out then with Dell Unix, and I worked on Sun OS to begin with, as Unix is. And for a while, I didn't really get into Linux until 1996, 97 something, my first installs.
Yeah. Which was it Slackware or another distro at the time?
No, I think it started with some Red Hat stuff in my first attempts.
Fantastic. So you got into the developer job with your brother there, and how did the life evolve from there?
Oh, that was an awesome way to, because that was also a small company, a small team, and I had got to do a lot of things, program different Unixes. We also had real-time operating systems on devices, so it was a lot of different things and a lot of embedded development. And embedded development it suited me because it was close to my Commodore 64 days, near the hardware and then real metal things. So that got me into embedded development, really. So I then pretty much stayed within embedded development for many years to come after that. But anyway, when at that developer job, I figured out this bigger details about the internet and how things work there, and I learned about IRC to chat with people across the world. And I started doing network programming in C for the first time, and I really got into this concept of open source, or before it was called open source, it was more like freely available source code programs, and that was fun and cool, and also a way to learn how others are doing things.
Yeah, I think we called it a little bit of a shareware, right? So I think that was some of the terms that we used back then.
Yeah, but shareware was often, you were supposed to pay for it at some point, or but yeah, so fun days. And since I never attended university, right, so I didn't actually learn this in any school. So I got my books and I studied other people's source code. I read man pages. I tried it out. I learned by doing mostly.
So you learn through doing the work itself.
Yeah, because I thought it was fun and I wanted to do it, right. How do I accomplish this thing I want to do? I have no idea. I need to figure that out, read about it, read other people's source code and see how do they do it and stuff like that.
And how did life evolve? Because you eventually went to work for Mozilla as well, correct?
Yeah, but that was still many years into the future.
Many years later. Yep.
So it actually, while working at this company called Frontech, so in 1996, I wrote a IRC bot, and I started with a precursor to curl in late 1996. It was called HTTP GET, which then just got HTTP pages, as a tiny tool. And that got me into working with that tool. We renamed it twice, actually. We renamed it into curl in 1998. And that was still just a small toy tool. And I had it, worked on it on my spare time. I had, all through this, I've always worked on code and developed stuff on my spare time because I think it's fun. So I've always done it as a hobby, right? So I did it then too. And so curl was a spare time project from then.
Yeah, it's just amazing how many great products and great projects came up as side projects, right? Because it's something that comes up as a passion, as a side project, and eventually that grows into something huge. Like,
but it's also
huge, right?
a powerful motivator, right? If you want to do something, it's your own itch, scratch your own itch, right? So if you want to do something, that's a powerful motivation to do something, and it's fun too. And if you do it for fun and you want it done, yeah, why not? Yeah. And I had that as a spare time project for another 20 years almost, because I mean, I worked as an embedded systems developer for several years. I switched jobs a few times, and I did a lot of these contractor things for different companies in the Stockholm area for many years. And then actually in 2014, I started working for Mozilla. And that was sort of the first time when actually both worlds could collide a little bit, because I worked with HTTP and networking on my spare time and embedded professionally. But then when I started working for Mozilla, I suddenly got to work with HTTP and networking and cookies and all of that, even professionally on my day job as well.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the embedded kind of development work that you did? What kind of devices you're working with, and what kind of learnings you got from that?
Mostly back then, it was often devices that companies were doing. So I actually started out mostly working for Ericsson, the big telecom company.
I see. Yeah,
it's very big in Sweden. So then I started with different kind of telephone switching things. But then I got into video devices a bit. I worked on modems. I worked on digital TV devices, and a lot of different networking devices as well, switches of different kinds and so on. So often devices then with a limited amount of storage and memory. So they often ran, at least in the early 2000s, they never ran Linux, right? They have different kind of real-time operating systems because they had to be really small, just a few, well, sometimes not even a megabyte of RAM and storage, right? Over time, that became more and more embedded Linux. So over time, the embedded devices grew in size and became more and more suitable to run Linux. So over time, everything became more Linux. So basically from 2010 or something, it was always embedded Linux, pretty much.
So before Linux being those devices, were you doing programming assembly mainly, or other languages?
No, usually just C.
Just C.
Some assembly sometimes when it needed to in bootloaders and getting things to run, but mostly it was C, and different real-time operating systems, OSC, OS9, OS 9000, VxWorks. There's a lot of them, and there were even more back then. Any
C++ at all, or not?
I have done C++. I've never liked C++, so I've always been happy to stick to C.
Yeah.
When I joined Mozilla in 2014, that was all C++, right? So then I was sort of forced into, now it's C++ full time. So sure, I can do C++ if I have to. I'd rather avoid it.
So what happened between that company that you're working with your brother and then up to the time that you got to Mozilla? Like you said, there's a lot of years between those opportunities there.
So the big scheme of things, I guess not a lot of things happened. I had a lot of different contracts. I switched sort of employers a few times. I got 2 kids. You know, I moved around, bought myself a house. Yeah, I grew up. So I got a family all of a sudden. But at the same time, curl grew and became more and more used, got more users, and got more and more widely spread everywhere. So at some point, of course, I realized that, hey, this little toy I started a long time ago, it's actually quite big. People are actually using this. So yeah.
How did you come up with the idea? What motivated you to start the side project?
Well, the first idea was I just wanted HTTP downloaded, right? So because then I worked on my bot for an IRC bot. So the IRC bot is basically a companion in a chat channel, right? So you could ask the bot questions, tell us about blah blah. It could ask her frequently asked questions. You could, if typically I actually started IRC talking about Amiga because I after my Commodore 64 I switched to Amiga, so I used Amiga for a while, and so the bot would answer Amiga questions, or you could throw it, tell us about this, and then one day, since it was an international channel, we talked about, hey, it could be possible to have the bot, you know, translate currencies for us, since it was an international channel. How much is the price of this? I mean, in your country. And how hard can it be to do a currency translator, right? I just needed to download currency rates every now and then. How do you download currency rates to my bot? I needed a little tool to do that. So that's how I got into a little tool that downloads HTTP for my currency translator in my bot. Of course, over time, I ignored the bot and the currency translation, and I just kept the HTTP tool that then added more protocols and uploads. And it grew from there. In 2000, I converted the command line tool also into a library so that other software could use the library and do internet transfers. And PHP was one of the first ones to adopt it, right? So it immediately sort of took off a little bit extra thanks to PHP. And then it just grew. And already from the start, people contributed patches and bug reports and feature requests. And so from pretty much day one, people would participate and help out, and I would share this online. It was always free, open source, and we would iterate, and I would encourage people to help out, and we would try to build a community from day one, right? Be open, be available, lower friction, and not introduce complications for contributions, and try to keep a good, friendly atmosphere so that people want to participate and you want to be associated with the project.
And everything written in C, right?
Everything in C, and in C89, which is sort of the old style to the right C as well. And we're still doing things in C89. So yes, we're stuck in time in that aspect. Yeah. And
it's just amazing that it just keeps crossing my mind. It's a side project that became one of the most used tools online, right? So if you think about the impact of curl, and it's used everywhere, right? So it's just incredible. That was just a side project for you at some point in time, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And how has it evolved through the years? So how many people contribute to the curl project these days? Do you know?
Well, I know that we have merged code from over 1,400 humans. So it's a lot of people, and I also always track and say thank you to people who like report bugs or just suggest things that we implement. And the list of names in that file called thanks in the repository, it contains 3,500 names now. So quite a lot of people are around and helping out. And of course, most of these people only ever showed up once, right? They only did one change and I never saw them again. So of course, that's unfortunate, because I would rather prefer them to hang around and do another change as well, because why not? Now you've figured out how to do it, you can do it again. But I mean, I'm not the one. I still appreciate that they did that single fix, right? They did maybe just the typo fix once, and that's also a good thing, right? As long as they improve things and contribute, that's good. So there's really that wide range. There's some people that have been around and close to the project for 20 years and keep doing things almost daily, and then there's the long tail of people, less and less frequent, and then the several hundreds of people who only showed up once and will never do it again.
Yeah. And how do you, you're an engineer, you're a software engineer, you develop code, but now you have this huge community, right? So there's, like you said, thousands of people contributing. And how do you keep the community together? How do you encourage participation? How do you keep a healthy environment? Can you tell us a little bit more about how do you manage that, and how others also help you manage that community to make sure that's a successful community as it is?
I think first, I most of what I do is just to try to foster a friendly and nice surrounding, and lead by example. So we use a friendly language. We don't and as I said, we don't introduce weird policies or concepts. We make it easy for people to contribute. We make sure that we document everything so that it is easy for everyone to read up how we work and what's, how to do things. You don't have to ask anyone to figure things out. Everything is actually possible. You can ask if you want to, right? But you can also figure that out. And then just live by that and make sure that try to act in a way that I would prefer others to act when I join other projects, right? And other than that, I don't have any magic tricks other than keep doing that. And also then by being respectful to people who contribute, saying thanks when they do contribute, and also that's one of the reasons I also keep a close keep track of everyone who is helping out, right? That's why I have this list with all the contributors, because I think it's important to say thank you and keep track and give credit, because that's what I can give, right? It's open source, and it's people volunteer their contributions, right? But the least I should do and could do is say thanks and show appreciation. So that's what I try to do, and keep making sure that I say thanks and keep track of the people that have helped out. And those are the fundamental things, I think.
Yeah. So keep the community together and saying thank you to people. It's an important word to know, right? So it's great to help push the community forward. And I think curl became a full-time job for you roughly 6 years ago, correct?
Yes. So I worked at Mozilla at the time, and I got a little bit bored there for reasons, but so I decided to quit Mozilla and try to do something more curl, to do more curl as a job. I didn't really know how to do that, because it's really difficult to change that spare time thing into a full-time thing as a sort of as a one-man person. How do you do that? But I was lucky, so I had my friends at wolfSSL, which is a company that already has a bunch of open source libraries that they are all selling support for, in a similar style that curl is, and so they believed in the business idea and the business concept of doing that. So they basically said, hey, join us and we will sell curl support under our umbrella, and you can get a salary from day one. So that's what I did. So I turned around and started selling curl support via wolfSSL, and they then helped me to sell this and do the contracts and stuff like that. So it was actually a pretty good way to kickstart a business around curl. And then since then, I've been doing curl full time.
It's fantastic. How's a typical day for you? Like you do a lot of development work, you do more planning. How is a typical work day for you?
I still do all of that. So I do a lot of development still. It's still a small project in the number of people that are actually, regularly, repeatedly involved and doing a lot of things. I'm the only one who is full-time employed to do it. We're a few others that are part-time paid to do it. And so it's a small team. So I try to do things the same way, pretty much. I try to involve everyone. It doesn't really matter if you're paid to participate or if you do it as a volunteer or if you're paid by another company or whoever, because I can't really know who's out there. So I try to be as open and available and, you know, talk to the wider community without knowing exactly who that is. So I try to do that and continue to do that. So, and since I'm the only one who's doing this full time, I understand that a lot of the planning and putting some of the administrative tasks and stuff like that, that falls on me because I'm the one who's getting paid to do this. So I get to do it. So that, and then since we're, I mean, then I get to do a lot of things because there's a lot of things to do when you want to maintain a project and make sure that everything is as they should be.
And what can you share about the curl roadmap? What do you have in mind? What's in the discussion that you could share with us? Anything that's not a secret?
Well, nothing is really secret in the curl projects. We try to make it extremely open and transparent.
Yeah.
Of course, there are some secrets when I have customers involved, right? But
of course,
apart from that, the open source project, everything is aggressively open and transparent. So, but the roadmap for curl is kind of interesting because I try to not plan so much ahead. I go sort of just look a little bit into the future, look at what I want to work on myself and maybe features that I see in the surrounding that we should focus on, and I try to work on that. But since that's just me, right? There's so many others that are involved and they just show up, so I can't really control what others are doing and what they want. So the roadmap is often also controlled by someone showing up one day and say, hey, I wrote this huge patch and I want it merged. Could we work on that? And maybe we do, maybe we don't. It depends on, so we're, of course, curl does a lot of protocols. Now we do 28 different URL schemes, or we can call them protocols. So a lot of protocols, and all those protocols tend to move independently. So, you know, we get new versions of protocols. We got HTTP 3 a few years ago, right? And for one of these things that we want, or we're looking into doing now, is add more. For example, adding support for different combinations of HTTP versions and proxies, doing HTTP 3 over HTTP 1 or HTTP 2 proxies, or doing HTTP 1 or HTTP 2 over an HTTP 3 proxy. So that's one added sort of more dimensions in the matrix of different combinations of things. It was brought up just today on the mailing list. Should we support Dane for certificates to speak when we do TLS? And yeah, we're constantly talking a lot about how to. There's so many different layers and complications in a protocol stack like this. We removed support for one of the TLS backends in curl, because in curl we support a lot of different TLS backend. So you can, when you build curl, you can select which TLS library you want to support, because users have wanted that. So we can support, I think we support 11 different ones at this point, which is huge, a huge amount. And recently we dropped support for one of them, which is the secure transport TLS backend, which is the native TLS backend on Apple devices, basically Mac OS and iOS and all of those. And as a follow-on effect of us dropping support for that is that we now have less support for the native CA store on Apple devices. Oh, that's one of the things we want to add support for, better support for the native CA store on Apple devices. So we have that also sort of as a side thing that we want to get
part of the roadmap. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody listens to this interview and they want to contribute, they want to learn more about curl, what would you recommend that they do? How do they start learning about curl, and how do you think would be an effective way to be able to contribute to the project?
Well, I think it depends entirely on what kind of person you are, of course. I think I would encourage everyone to maybe join the mailing list, maybe just browse the issues, the pull requests, maybe read. We have a to-do document and we have a known issues document in the Git repository that lists just things we could do and a lot of known issues. And I mean, I always try to say that the best thing to work on, apart from all that we have issues that others have found, is if you have a problem yourself or an issue yourself, or you found a typo in the documentation or whatever, something you feel that, hey, I want to fix this particular thing, something that drives you and motivates you to work on it, because that's a great way to motivate you to actually figure out how to fix it, test it, and contribute that change. So
do you still, going back to the Commodore 64 days, do you still have demo meetings with your friends and talk about stuff and show what you're doing and show the projects, or does it still happen? Or?
No, I have a lot of friends who are still doing the Commodore 64 things, so sort of stuck in the nostalgia world. But no, I don't do that myself. I feel that I have too much to do in the current project. So yeah, I do curl stuff. I have curl work up to my ears all the time. So that's what I do. I don't feel that I should do anything else. This is what I want to do, and this is what I feel I need to do.
So now that curl's your business, so it's your main project. What's your side project? Do you have any side projects at all? I'm always curious to understand when your side project becomes your main project, what do you keep as a side project?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually primarily also use curl as my spare time project too. So I spend spare time on curl as well as work hours. So I guess primarily I do curl, but occasionally I find spare time things, other projects that I feel like working on. A long time ago, I started together with my brother again and another friend. We started a Rockbox, which was a separate project that we did reverse engineering of MP3 player firmwares, and we did that as a side thing for many years. So I'm totally up for finding other things to fiddle around with, and I like development, and I also dabble a little bit when and in particular in things that are related to curl. Maybe sometimes I help out or poke at or submit bug requests or pull requests for things that are related, that I feel, hey, when I find something I think I can help out with. So I do a little bit here and there too, outside of curl as well.
So you're contributing to other open source projects as well.
Yeah.
And Daniel, everybody these days is AI is everywhere, right? So there's coffee makers and AI-based coffee makers. There's everything is AI.
Yes.
How do you see the state of AI today, and what do you see as the impact of AI on coding, and what do you think it's how things are going to change from where we are to where we're going to be?
That's a big question. So first, I think I personally don't use much AI myself when I do development. I've tried it out and tested it a little bit, and sure, you can get a lot of code from AI, but you also need a lot of manual oversight and either filter out the bad things or cherry pick the good things. Using these AI tools on coding is a little bit, I like to compare it with having a very eager junior to help out. Sure, they can crank out a lot of code, but it's not necessarily the code you want. But sure, I think it's going to improve and it's going to be helpful. And I think the most productive people can use it as being and becoming more productive, because you can certainly get more suggestions and more alternatives and get the eager suggestions. And maybe even if you discard 95%, maybe those 5% is good enough and you wouldn't do them yourself and it could help you. So I think that's a good thing. In general, I think there's no way to avoid it. I think it's going to happen whether we like it or not. So it's just inevitable that we will have this in our lives. From my point of view, right now, I actually mostly feel like I'm suffering from AI in the aspect that people are overconfident in that the AI actually knows what it does. So we get a lot of people who are asking the AIs for example, finding security problems in curl, and the AI will then tell them, here's a security problem, and they will then submit it to us, and hey, I found a security problem in curl. But maybe that wasn't a security problem, right? Because the AI really doesn't know what a security problem is, or it just made something up. And we get a lot of those made up AI-generated security reports nowadays, which is not helpful at all. It just overloads us with junk, actually.
Yeah. Are you getting a lot of contributions that you can clearly see that were written using AI? They're not necessarily good changes?
No, I don't see a lot of that.
Okay.
I think maybe because it's already, it's kind of a high bar to make a contribution already. And and if you add a new feature, you also need to add tests and everything. So I'm sure people are still using AI when they do these things, but they use them in a way that makes the code actually pretty good in the end. And then, then they use it the good way. So then I don't think it's bad. So I see very little bad code from AI in the project. Luckily, at least so far.
That's good. And it's interesting how we're seeing tools like Cursor and some IDE with AI and helping some of the developers as well. It's kind of interesting, but yeah, it's hard to believe that's going to replace, like some companies are saying, we're going to replace all developers in 6 months. I don't think so.
No. Those are just, some CEOs say that to boost their shares prices.
Yeah.
But no, they're not going to replace. I mean, if you make X amount of developers more productive, maybe you can remove a few developers, because maybe if 10 people get productive as 14, maybe you can get rid of 2, but it's not going to replace developers in the short term. Maybe down the road, a few years ahead, somehow, if something magic happens. I don't know. I can't tell the future.
Yeah, but it would be interesting, right? So like if we go back in time, Commodore 64 and 85 and 86, so much has happened, right? So we're talking about the 40 years of technology evolution here. So mobile computing did not exist back in 1985, and so much happens. And I was talking to my wife yesterday, and so it would be interesting to see 50 years from now. Well, I probably won't be here, but it would be interesting to see how technology evolves and what kind of new things come up, which is always, I think, fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. And just looking back, as you say, 40 years, or even just 20 years or something, it was impossible then to even have a slightest view of the future as it is today, right? So, of course, we have no idea what's 20 years down the line. It could be something really different from today, yes.
So I'm talking about the past a little bit more, and going through your career here, if you stop to think and you look back, would you have done anything different if you had a chance to go back in time and change something?
I don't think so, because I'm generally pretty happy both where I am, how I have ended up like this, and where I'm positioned to go forward as well. So I really have nothing to complain about. So I think, of course, somehow a lot of things have just fallen into places, accidentally or by choice, but it has worked out really well for me. So judging by that, I'd say most of the things have just been the correct way. Sure, a lot of minor decisions and details, looking back at it, I could have done it differently. I could have done it better and maybe avoided a few mistakes down the road. But I mean, we also learn from the mistakes, right? We have to do mistakes. We can't avoid mistakes.
Absolutely. And I don't know anybody that has never made a mistake. So I don't think you know either.
No, exactly. And if you haven't done mistakes, then you probably haven't learned enough either. So you have to do mistakes to really figure that out. No, that's the wrong way to do it. Now I know.
Yeah. And Daniel, like I was mentioning to you before we start recording, we run a group in Brazil. There's roughly 4,000 people who want to learn how to code and want to get into tech. And they have all sorts of questions. They have all sorts of doubts, right, about career and about how to learn, the best way to learn, and opportunities and everything else. What would you recommend to those that are trying to learn and trying to get into tech today? What would you recommend to those people?
Well, today, of course, we have more opportunities and more ways to learn and get into things than we ever had before. So now, and I think one of the things I think I've learned over the years is that you should really just not be too afraid of trying things out and testing, and rather have a go at it and try it out and ask the questions rather than hesitating and waiting and not ask the questions, because that's the way to do it. And try to go with what you think is fun, because when it's fun, you have the motivation to try to do it. I mean, rather than trying to second guess what might be useful or attractive in the future on a sort of working market or whatever. Do whatever you think is fun, to get into it, to learn, to make the game you want, or make the solution you want to do, and automate whatever you want to do, because that's a powerful driver. When you want it, that's good. Then you have a driver to actually learn how to do it and figure that out, and find a community of friends or that want similar things or interested in similar things, because it's a good thing to find other people it's sort of in a similar situation or similar knowledge level, perhaps, that you can bounce it around, ask how did you do it, and learn from your friends. At least I've found that very useful in the beginning, when sort of have someone, when you get stuck somewhere, I don't understand this, ask someone who actually maybe just solved the problem or did it a while ago, or think similarly like you.
That's fantastic, and the power of the community, the power of helping for others, right? Help together, learn together. I think would be
exactly. And it's not only useful and good; it's also more fun, right? Because it makes it more social, so that you can sort of celebrate your wins together, and that's much more fun.
Yeah, it's important to look back and see how you talk about the demo that you went through, and everything that you learned, everything you saw happen in the time, and from others, right? How much you learned from others as well in those demos. So that's fantastic. And so going back here, we're talking for almost 1 hour here. Do you have any not necessarily technology related, but any recommendations for books or music or anything that you like that you want to share with the community here?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not much of a book reader these days. I spend far too much time in front of my computer. I mostly read books on my vacations, actually, and then I don't know what to read, so I actually go with whatever my wife suggests. So it's usually, from my point of view, a little bit random. So I don't know really. I don't think I have a good answer for you there.
Any music that you like, or any movies that you like, or do you want to share?
I like watching movies in general, and I like well, what's a good movie? The other day, I went to the cinema yesterday and watched Eddington, and I watched The Materialist the week before that. Current movies, both of them pretty good, actually. Otherwise, I don't have any favorite ones. I like to see a variety of them, and not just the general American top movies, but preferably more niche ones.
Do you like science fiction by any chance?
I like science fiction, of course, yes.
Yeah. Have you watched any of the Apple science fiction movies, like Foundation? Do you remember that?
I have that ahead of me still. Yeah,
it's a good one. They're on season 3 now. It's based on Isaac Asimov books, so it's a really good show. I'm watching, so I'm enjoying. It's a lot of fun. Really well done. So if you like science fiction, it's a good recommendation from your spare time when you're not working on Curl.
Yeah, but sometimes you just need to breathe and take some time off. So yes, I can't spend all my time in front of a computer. I need other things too. Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, so it's we all need some spare time, right?
Yeah, I actually play floorball quite a lot, which is a
okay.
kind of a Swedish indoor sport with. It's a little bit like an indoor hockey thing.
Oh, I see. So Canada and Sweden, we all play hockey, so it's a good thing. So
yeah.
And Daniel, like I said, we're talking here for close to 1 hour. Is there a question that I did not ask that you wish I had asked?
Oh, no, there isn't, because I mean, there's such a big universe of topics and questions that we could have spoken about. Sure, this is yes, almost an hour, and we've talked about a lot of things, right? But there's an entire universe of more things to talk about. I don't know, career things, open source licenses, or I don't know, patents, or how to make money on this, and how the business actually works here. And I don't know, there's so much we could have talked about when it comes to open source and working with it. But I think we touched a wide set of different angles, so it's good.
So allow me to ask one more question. You mentioned open source. So if somebody wants to come up with an open source project today, they have an idea and they want to make it open source, what would you recommend that they do to make that grow a community around that project as you have done with curl?
I actually get that question quite a lot. It's really hard now when you make a new project now today and reach out and find an audience, because we're drowning in open source projects, right? I think the ecosystem.ms site, ecosystems site, they count 10.7 million projects or something like that. So there's certainly no shortage of open source projects. So when you create a new one, you add a new drop in the ocean, right? So how do you expect someone else to find it? I think it's really hard. I think there's no silver bullets and there's no shortcuts. You just have to make it as good as you can, make the information as sort of out there, and document it so that it's actually an observer or a visitor can actually understand what it is and read about it, and make sure that your friends know about it and that they sort of maybe like it, because if they don't, maybe it'll stop there already, right? So at least, I mean, start in the small and make sure that things seem to be fine, and then be open, and then sort of try to do things in the way you wanted it to be if you found out the project. And then, I don't know, make it as good as possible, and put the code out there already from the start, right? And start working on it. And I think you should, or you need to be prepared to be alone in the project for a while, because that's just the nature of it. So maybe your open source project is just you to start with, and then hopefully, ideally, people will find it and figure it out. And I mean, you can talk about it with your friends, and you can, talk about it on local meetups in your city, go to one of those conferences when there are lightning talks, and talk about your things and explain why your project is fun and important to others to try out and use, and work it from there. I mean, it can take a long time, and sometimes I think people look at my project and say, curl, sure, we have a countless number of users and installations, and that's really huge, but it took me a long time to get there.
To get there. Yep.
And it's very important to remember that maybe what you need is a long time. Because I get a lot of people who say, well, I've been working on this project now for several months, but no one has showed up. And that's maybe so, but maybe that's not enough, right? Either it's just not the right project, it could be that, or maybe you just haven't given it enough effort and time, because it might take a long time until you reach out there. And it might never happen, of course, but it might also if you just give it enough time.
Yeah, but people gotta try, right? So if they try, if they don't try, they'll never find out how that would have
exactly
been.
Yeah, but I think sometimes people think there's some kind of easy way to do this, or if you haven't managed to reach success within some certain amount of time, then you have failed. But Yeah, and maybe you have, but maybe you'd have not just haven't given it enough time yet. I have this. I have a reminder myself. I have a screenshot that I did on my website for curl 2 years after I started it, when I celebrated that I got 300 downloads of curl in a single month, and I thought that was, yeah. And look at this, 300 downloads in 1 month. That's awesome. And I mean, looking back at it, it feels kind of amusing, right? Because now we're on a different scale. But it took a long time. And also, it's also important to remember that success can be measured in many different ways, right?
Absolutely.
300 downloads can certainly be a success. I mean, that's way more than you have friends. So it's certainly out there. And some things, I mean, that's cool. And getting 1 billion installations, sure, some can go there, but many won't, and you can still be a success. You can still have fun. You can still do everything you want without getting to those volumes.
Yeah, Daniel. Again, we have been talking here for close to 1 hour. Just want to take a moment here to thank you for the time, and thank you for all the work that you have done, all your contributions to the, what you have built and curl, and the impact that this has had in so many people. And it's absolutely fantastic. It's a privilege talking to you today. And I'm going to stop recording. Give me a couple of minutes here. Thank you so much. Pleasure meeting you.
Well, thank you. Bye.
You just stop recording.